let's get into this.
Red, amber, green. Couldn't be simpler, could it? Some weeks ago, the hopes of millions of holidaymakers, the thousands employed in the travel industry, and all of our fellow citizens with families across the continent of Europe and beyond listened to the Transport Secretary's words about the quarantine-free green list with not inconsiderable hope.
And the reason for that is we've ended up getting way ahead in terms of our vaccination program in this country, and we're just having to wait for other countries to catch up with us. And that's going to gradually happen. Obviously, you can see it's happening. And so that list should expand.
What a difference 3 weeks makes. Not only did the list not expand today, but contracted with Portugal removed. It's left those who booked holidays, but crucially, those with family in Portugal, in yet more limbo.
We decided to put it off until this summer when we'd hoped that the government would have a plan in place in order to allow international travel. But clearly they don't, given today's announcement 2 weeks after Portugal was added to the green list. And I'd intended to head to Portugal in about 2 weeks' time to see the family have a break after a very long year at university and with everything else. But I don't think I'm going to be able to do that now.
In one sense, the lack of expansion is curious. To take some key metrics, say case rates, quite a few holiday destinations like Italy, Portugal or Malta have case rates which are less than or around the same as the UK. And though the UK got off to a very creditable start in vaccinations, about which we've heard a lot, we've heard less about the fact that most European countries have also done very well of late and made solid progress. And the UK is now left with one of the least porous borders in Europe, with some countries offering more flexible rules for the vaccinated, which the UK is not doing. Some experts say a combination of that and rules for countries with better genomic sequencing to guard against variants might be a smarter approach.
A lot of the most popular travel destinations for English tourists, for example, have sequencing of less than 1% of their national caseload. So by that measure, it's quite possible that a traveller could go to a country and come back and bring an entirely novel variant, and it will be very, very difficult to trace that and trace it back to where it came from with such low variant surveillance capacity. So I think that could be a really big part of it, a combination of permissions based on vaccination status, but also judging countries based on their surveillance status could really reduce the risk of introductions over the coming months.
Variants are a real problem. Public Health England released this document today with a report suggesting vaccine protection for the Delta or Indian variant is lower compared to other variants, at least with one dose. But of course, that's for a variant which is already here, allowed in after a long period where India, whence it came, was left off the red list. Talking to sources in Whitehall today, it seems that ministers have both been stung by what happened with the Delta variant, but also spooked by the data in the PHE report. And with the full reopening of June the 21st looming, they are choosing to prioritise that full reopening rather than foreign travel, whilst waiting with bated breath to see what effect the Delta variant has, not just on cases which are rising, but crucially on hospitalisation. But in the meantime, it does leave those who want to travel, who need to travel, who work in travel, with precious little idea or sense of what the government's plan is to get them moving again.
I think we need a transparent system so that everybody can see what is the data, what's the evidence on which decisions are being taken, so that we could tell, for example, about why the government didn't put India on the red list much earlier when it should have done, but also so we can see why they took the decision to put Portugal on the green list and then to take Portugal off the green list. Otherwise, what we'll end up with is a summer of just chop it and changing, which will just end up being chaotic for everyone, rather than actually having a clear, transparent way of taking sensible public health decisions.
As ever, paradoxes abound. A tougher border regime this year than last despite vaccination. A date for full reopening apparently movable, but which feels fixed. A policy to keep out variants, when perhaps the worst we know of is already here. These next weeks, whilst we see exactly how far, if at all, that variant has thrown us off track, will be crucial indeed.
Lewis Goodall there. We did invite the government on, but they declined. I can now speak to Luke Petheridge, Director of Public Affairs at ABTA, which is an umbrella group for some of the biggest British travel companies. Luke, your reaction to the news today, first of all?
I think the reaction of the travel industry is one of dismay, as was covered in your clip just then. It is a surprising decision, not one that the industry was expecting. And I think one that, frankly, we need a bit more transparency and a bit more clarity on what the basis for it is.
But in terms of those people who've already booked, will they get their money back? Can the industry afford to do this about turn again?
It's important to remember that you can travel to amber destinations, and many people, of course, want to take their holiday, will want to travel and can self-isolate on return and indeed take the additional tests that will be required. If you're unable to do that and you are traveling within the next 3 weeks, we would advise that you speak to your tour operator or travel agency. Many of them are offering flexible terms and moving holidays where they're unable to be taken right now. But as I say, it's important to remember you can travel to amber destinations.
Yes, although today's news will have made a lot of people, not only if they can't isolate, as you've described, but it will make them think, well, perhaps I just shouldn't be going. And I suppose, yes, you want to see the data, but in the travel industry, as leaders within this, do you also not have to be having this conversation, I'm sure you didn't want to have to be having, that perhaps we just shouldn't be travelling at all at the moment?
I think the important thing to remember here is that the government, working with public health officials, set up the traffic light system. And across all three categories, they've put in place a series of mitigations, whether it be self-isolation, whether it be testing before you come home and testing once you're back in the UK. And of course, you test more if you go to an amber or red destination. And the point of that was that we can then mitigate the risk of re-importing coronavirus into the UK and enable people to travel, which is critical for the recovery of the international travel industry that employs hundreds of thousands of people in the UK and is worth nearly £40 billion in ordinary times. And we really do need now to focus on getting this industry back on its feet.
But I was just going to say, if you can't get to where you want to get to, what's the deadline that the travel industry is working towards? And can you afford to not have the summer you were planning?
I think what we need to see immediately, to be honest, from government now, it's very clear we're going to be under constraints for many weeks to come. We need to see a tailored package of financial support to help travel agents, tour operators and those businesses that have now gone 16 months without the ability to trade successfully, and yet the government hasn't provided a kind of tailored package of support to address the international travel constraints that they are imposing. I think that is the priority for the industry. And in terms of the other thing that we need government to focus on right now, it is getting that restart underway. Of course, we have another review coming up at the end of June. At that time, we need to see steps to treat people that have been fully vaccinated differently from those who haven't. We need to see the relaxation of some of the testing requirements for low-risk travel areas, and we really need the government to concentrate on getting more countries onto that green list at that time.
Like and subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notifications anytime I go live and make a video. Make sure you still subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment on this video, share this video.